Yeah, I think it's I think it's really important for young people, artists especially, to allow themselves to be exposed to change and to train change as a phenomenon, but also as like some kind of state of mind, to be adaptable, but then again to also understand what are the things that shouldn't be changing, and to recognize like what is something that is strictly tied to you know, your sensibility, your personality, that it makes you be what you are as an individual, but then again understand like what are things that should go through certain kind of transformation that are actually bringing growth. So this kind of transformation had to happen. Like once you are in a new, you know, environment and exposed to like new experiences, different cultures, different language to start. Like I remember once I started dreaming in English. That was for me a huge shock. Once when my roommate told me that, you know, when you talk while you are sleeping, that I was talking in English. I just, when I heard that, it was something that I was not able to imagine like few months before that can happen. So and it then made me feel like more confident. It's funny now I'm seeing that at that time I couldn't like process what that kind of information would mean to me, but it made me feel probably a little bit more confident of like, oh, how I'm understanding and grasping the world around me, like that I'm, you know, taking that language in and allowing it to be you know, present with my feelings. So once when we talk about writing, for example, it's interesting how it switches like the languages, Serbian and English language. You may remember like once you were, you know, thinking in Serbian and you are trying to describe something in English, and you don't want to lose that kind of like specific weight of things that language carries. It becomes an interesting play, an interplay of like what is the priority of, you know, what you want to communicate. Is it like a clarification of what you want to say, or is the weight that specific, you know, wording is carrying? So what is creating a bigger impact?
So what's amazing is when you actually have both. So it is actually enriched, and of course you can't resist being richer in knowledge and.
Yeah, and I think that's really important with what education that it's gained from different places, you know, around the world, it's carrying. So talking about like residency program, yeah, it can be an interesting exploration, but like education system I see as something completely different. Yeah, because, you know, you have like this specific time frame that you are, you know, spending, especially if something is lasting for like 3 years and it's, you know, intense, and you are developing your research and you are like approaching it from like really different angles, because it lasts like it's sometimes you feel like you have a short amount of time to, you know, create your project, but then suddenly it's too long and you want it to be done. So you have all these shifts in your mood and your observation of the whole thing. And I think that mess that happens in the head is something that it's really like it's a gift. Because while you are passing through that, you don't feel, I didn't feel comfortable. Like I was just, you know, it was pressure because of deadlines, and also constant. I didn't like the pressure when it comes to production. Like when we talk about art, I don't know, some people think like when you are in your studio that you need to produce constantly things, that through like making you are encountering kind of new insights and new ideas. Some people have different approach where they need time to, you know, to spend more time on a project in order to understand from where that is coming from. And
well, I guess there are different types of artists.
Yeah. Can you finish, please?
Yeah, so I mean, there is an artist that is explosive, and there is an artist that starts to do their masterpieces at the age of 80.
Yes, so that's why, like, if we talk about schooling, deadlines are the same for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's
so it is a structure. It's a structure.
It's a structure. So it cannot be. It has its how you say good
pros
and
and
bad.
cons.
Yeah, pros and cons. But what I enjoyed was that part of like experimentation, and like just approaching yourself from a completely different angle. Where like in Serbia, the approach, I studied painting, and the approach was like quite traditional. Like paintings was ending like canvas and paint, and you had drawing, and all people that I remember that were actively making work there, then it was like I don't remember having like many other medias involved, or just like thinking about, I don't know how to say. It's just like I started thinking about drawing.
inclination to experiment and to kind of
it was
almost like a willingness to fail as well.
Yeah, and it was that's correct. Like I felt a little bit more liberated during my master's to fail. Like I felt that mistake is not a big deal. So, and that's when you learn the most about within your work.
I guess the point is when you were in Serbia, you did your bachelor and master's in Serbia. So you were
no bachelor, just bachelor in painting. Yeah, right. And then I focused on drawing. So I started developing my drawing further during my master's in the States. And then I started like animating my work, like making my drawing move, and also involving projections and combining drawings with the projected imagery. So yeah, like exploring.
That is the development that came while you were in America.
Yeah.
When you changed environment.
Yeah, definitely. Like just being, I felt much more I don't know, space for play, but also I think that kind of freedom, like it depends. It's really tricky to talk about this in general terms, because each program is a separate story.
Yeah.
So it really depends where you are, in what kind of environment. Are you are in a more rural area or not? Are you in some city?
Are you in a politically
center?
or you're in a politically oppressed country?
Yeah, like it's really like difficult. It's every experience is pretty individual. So like what I can say, it's also tied to only myself right now. And what helped me, I can say, I don't think it's much education to kind of free up some of my ways of expressing. I think it was more like the space that I got once I removed myself from a certain context, which means like I removed myself from Serbia, and I was able to see from another perspective who I am, what I want to explore.
You had a certain distance.
I had a distance, and that actually allowed me. That distance allowed me to kind of rethink, reconsider all the stories and histories, that were that are put on you once you are constantly in specific.
What is interesting is that when you went to America, when you started developing your work, which is the work that today is your work, it's a kind of work that you would today present as your kind of as the work that also kind of describes you, right? But it's actually the subject of your work became your kind of personal history.
Yeah, that's interesting way of. Yeah, I don't know.
You almost needed a distance to be able to engage with your own self. You needed a kind of distance from one aspect of yourself to be able to engage with yourself.
yeah, because you are able to, you know, you reintroduce yourself to your own self, like just to, you know, have a different angle of like just different angle of, you know, observing like who you are and who you are
I guess
aspiring
partially
to.
that's because a lot of noise has been removed.
Yeah.
Another really interesting thing we mentioned in a conversation with Natasa and Joshua was this kind of nurturing oppression of Serbia as a kind of cultural environment, where words compensate for things that are not said, for the kind of oppression.
I mean, totally. There is that's also one beautiful thing with the new language, and I actually that's the moment when you think that somebody will understand what you are trying to say, even though some things are not said. But that doesn't happen because it's a different language, and that is forcing you to actually be more literate about it and explain what you are really trying to say, and you know, just to be more specific about it. And in this process, you are actually helping your own self to understand from where your kind of stance and understanding of things is coming from. And at the beginning, it's like tiring, you know, once you need to do that, especially if your language capacity, you know, like vocabulary is not in that level that you can easily, you know, explain yourself and your work. And I was at the beginning, I had to really be focused on what is the point, like what I really want to go to communicate when it comes to artwork. So like not to add
partially, do you think that's partially because you had to be literally understood, not in a kind of, oh, I'm not understood as an artist, but like I literally need to be understood in terms of words
literally.
that I say.
Because vocabulary
that's
and so that really is kind of putting you in a position to be super kind of specific, and to approach your work from a completely different way than when your own language is allowing you to maybe, you know, don't say some things,
to
travel around. And also that's I agree with that moment of like not saying words and like sentences and then thinking that, you know, we understand each other really well. Yes, that happens, but there is also a lot of misunderstanding that can happen between people if, you know, things are not said. But there is also that beautiful moment that happened like between, you know, friends, and where people can understand each other in silence. I also, you know, see that as a beautiful thing that happens, of course, in both languages. It just needs time. But there is this this moment, like when it comes to, you know, what you said, Serbia, and that some things don't get said. Is that
even though there is a lot of words. So I'm also but I'm also almost thinking, so there is the aspect of that becoming a kind of linguistic issue for you that you want to resolve in terms of how you communicate your work. But there is, I mean, I sometimes struggle with having to have a point. You know, I sometimes think it's okay not to have a very specific answer to your question, or it's okay not to have the answer to the question when people ask you, what is your work about? Well, look at it in a sense. But I think what you said is interesting, because it's it kind of bypasses this step, which I think sometimes can be problematic. And the purpose of saying what your work is about is purely a kind of linguistic new environment where you're literally trying to communicate, like buy bread. It's on that level, right? It's on that kind of basic level. And somehow on that kind of most basic level, which is like I'm trying to buy bread, you seem to achieve this kind of essence, right? That on the other side, you could have spent 3 hours saying words on top of words on top of words, and you wouldn't get there.
Yeah, and that literally happened. Like in my first semester, you know, I had this wonderful friend. We became friends later on, but he was my professor of drawing, Grady Capua, and I was his assistant. And so, and it's in the first semester we had this class, a seminar from drawing, where we had to, like, every week, you know, talk about our work in some, you know, aspect, and like actually explain who we are, what we do, from where we are coming from, and all of that. And that was for me, like, you know, I wasn't, like, prior to going to masters, English, like, wasn't, I knew English, but I didn't use it in that academic discourse that much. So it was pretty intense to kind of really present yourself in a manner that you think you should be understood, you know. So I was super, like, what I explained, what was happening, like that was that. I was super specific and kind of taking time to have, like, not much words, but to be, you know, straightforward. And he was always complimenting the way how I speak about work, and I was just in shock, like, okay, there was a support there, of course, but on the other hand, you know, there was this moment of I wasn't going around and I wasn't, like, trying to fill in the whole, you know, story
fill the
about
space
it.
with the words.
With words, it was just like this need to, you know, how we can, like, find the best way to understand each other. And that was super helpful for me to actually think clearer about my work, you know. But then again,
and to take it into a certain certain direction.
Just to, like, take out certain elements and portions and think, you know, deeper about it.
Okay, so so I think there was something really interesting that you said, and that is the kind of transformation of an artist. And obviously education has constraints, but at the same time, it offers certain freedoms. So it's a real game of give and take. And, you know, I think it was very interesting what you said about, as an artist, you need to make these decisions of where you take something or where you leave something behind in order to develop, progress. And there is a kind of fine line between sticking to your things that you think are essential, that are you, and some other place where you're supposed to get to. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I remember when we were in our teenage years, really, we went to a certain small atelier in our hometown of Užice, where we attended kind of extracurricular classes of drawing and painting. And at the time, our teachers, and it was a traditional kind of environment where we were asked to draw exactly what we see, and to shade things in the way that the light falls onto an object, and to kind of construct the face of the person that's posing in a kind of geometric way, and you know, work with color, etc. So in that environment, we were also sometimes told by one of our teachers that we're either a painter or a drawer.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, it was a kind of, in this kind of traditional sense, there was a division. Oh, you're a drawer, you're thinking line. And I've never heard that anywhere else.
It's completely opposite from the approach that I encountered during my schooling
or
outside.
there was this, like, I remember I was told, oh, you're a painter, you're thinking kind of blocks of paint.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? Like, do you, I mean, you know, having gone in and started to explore animation and other things?
I think it's really interesting to go back to that comment, because that way of thinking, I find pros and cons, right, as always. So that way of thinking brought me to this moment of me exploring further my drawing. I finished painting, right? Like that was my that's what I studied at the Academy of Arts.
That was your bachelor.
Bachelor, yeah. So, but I realized through 4 years of, you know, studying painting that I'm actually thinking as a drawing person. You know, that I'm more close to line as a mark, you know, mark making. That is that. So I was curious about like how that will develop if I really, you know, dedicate to that idea of me, you know, using drawing as a primary language, let's say. So but then once I entered further, like that exploration of my drawing, it became completely another world where I was, you know, started using graphite dust for the first time, and I started painting with graphite, and that was still a drawing. So, but again, like I started animating my drawings, and line became this erased trace that was creating these mesmerizing surfaces. So it was completely, you know, like surface and line, linear way of thinking was blending and merging, and you couldn't separate the both. So but it started. So this whole, you know, I am, who knows what would happen if I didn't like recognize within myself a painter or drawer. But it's so it started exploration of this new world, you know, the idea that I'm more maybe a drawing person, but it would completely block me from this really rich world that I discovered if I stayed in that state of mind that I'm just a drawing person. So that's a different thing that happened. What I was saying at the beginning, you know, a different approach to work, different approach to exploration, is that I really removed myself from this idea of that you are a one thing or the other, because I started seeing, you know, art and the technique that you are using is just like a way of thinking, you know, so which is much broader than like this physical shape of things. Would that be a drawing or a painting or a photo or a video or whatever? It's like, it's important what you are communicating with the mixture of all of this. So it's a conversation that is happening, you know, with the elements that you are using to explain, you know, stuff that are, you know, interesting to you, or that are bothering you maybe, or that you cannot explain to yourself differently. Because my work for me is some kind of therapy, where I'm actually like through erasing and putting up new layers of graphite, I'm meditating upon shapes and things that I'm like interested in and I'm thinking about in that specific moment. So there is like that aspect of it too. So
that's interesting about
meditation. I don't know if did I
of course you did, but there is a thing about meditation that you just said, that you meditate over it and that you kind of feel it, feel the material, feel the kind of, or follow a certain instinct. And so I'm wondering, because your work has a narrative within it, does the narrative change as within your meditation over your work? Literally has a narrative, like you write a story and then you animate the story, but does the story change, or are there any subtle things that happen along the way that through the kind of meditation over the technique, or is that kind of one thing?
Yeah, it's in my work process is like really important aspect of the thinking, like meditating upon like process as a like something that has a that lasts. So I'm making one body of work for a longer period of time, and coming, leaving it and coming back to it, erasing, and then bringing again, like certain like narratives, and they definitely reveal new aspects of the story while they are emerging from the piece of paper. Like if we are talking about animation, that is done in a technique of erasure. So one frame is revealing the, like they are related and connected, and once it's erased, one frame, once it's erased, it reveals another one. So they are closely tied together, and they cannot function without each other, but the previous one is not present once the other one is happening. So, but the traces are there to inform the story that gets told through time. So kinda they are changing. So it's never a process like, oh, I want this to happen and I want this to be communicated. Yes, that's like the kind of
the base,
but a lot of things that I'm not controlling arrive through graphite dust, through some surfaces that you are not completely in a control of. And that is what is calling in for something to meditate upon. So what are the new stories that are actually hidden beneath the one that you were wanted to communicate? And when I talk about therapy, I think that's that portion of it, that you are revealing parts of yourself through your own artwork that you need to work on more, that you need to understand better, that you need to understand. Like if we talk about fear, from where that fear is coming from, like what are the things that are haunting you, like what are the images that are haunting you, and why those images are there, and what is that trace that is your mark making. So all these.
So if the fear is subject of your work, and your work takes such a long time because again you constantly erase and redraw, and there is a process. You're saying that within that process of physical, there is so much.
There is like this.
I guess there is so much. Well, there is so much thought, but there is also kind of, well, as you said, meditating over a certain
it's
subject
like
matter.
It's I don't know. I changed, like I made some small break from like actual art making, that in Belazemian countryside that I was involved in building of physical, objects and literal transformation of units that were already there. So I had some, like I'm changing my angle, like thinking about what my work is about, what is that, and it's constantly you are constantly rediscovering what is that drawing in my practice, like drawing, what is that, what is the purpose of it, and
so you
like
added the
so at the beginning of schooling I was thinking like, oh, it's about like longing, and it has like these nostalgic portions of it, you are far away from home, and then culturally what happened there, like family history. It was there through some stories that were written and that were transcribed within like drawing, but then like through time you realize like, oh wait, why this technique, why am I using like erasure, and what is happening there, when we talk about the drawing as a therapy, like how much trauma is present in this work, and trauma is always kind of hidden, and you need to understand from where that is coming from, and then you go back through family stories, and then you rewrite them, like you rethink about them, and then you realize that you are actually by, you know, erasing, you are trying to unremember certain things, like to remember them through inscribing them, but then erasing them to not forget them, but kind of
well, to allow yourself to progress.
To progress, to let it go.
Work, yes.
Yeah, to let it
both
go.
Work and personality wise.
Yeah, and like, and when is the time when you let go of the stories that we were so kind of fascinated about and like were so deeply engaged with, and that moment of letting go is something really specific. And I think like the atmosphere that I have in my work is kind of trying to how you say, embrace that idea of healing and in relation to fear and the mechanisms that are hidden that are like perpetuating it. So it's completely really abstract, like once, you know, it's said this way, and I'm not sure if it's visible in the work, if it would be visible in the work to other people, but the mechanism, like, of, you know, how it functions, I think it's present in the work itself. And once I arrived to countryside, like talking about switching from studio making and then like being in the family, you know, household.
So let's explain that, because just for
yeah, so I once I came back from New York to Serbia, into my countryside, to where Natasha's and my dad is from, like our grandmother and aunt are living there, and so it's a family household. And I started transforming the units that were already there, used for like certain purposes, in order to accommodate some, you know, workshops and stuff, like a space to create spaces that can host you know, people interested in nature and like some kind of like retreat, but also artists in, you know, residence that is planned for the future. When we talk about, I don't know if you talked with Natasha and Josh probably about HEKLER. Yeah, yes. HEKLER, and how to facilitate, you know, events and conversations that are happening throughout HEKLER. So to have like a physical body and the base for.
I think it's important to also say that this has been your sort of long time dream. To, well, in a way, to come back and use this land in the countryside, which has these vernacular architecture houses, these like four walls with a roof. With this kind of roof, timber roof or whatever. This very kind of traditional architecture.
Yeah, traditional, you know, like Serbian architecture. So
which actually featured in one of your artworks, with one of your animated artworks.
Yeah, exactly. Like
which was the subject of your kind of artistic exploration. Right?
Yeah. So yes, exactly. So that all, you know, happened through certain period of years, like, I don't know, 5 years. So it was, you know, entering again, what is art practice? What is to be called art piece or not? And it's, you know, if we talk about it, like it's as a process, if we talk about it.
I mean, I think this conversation is so beautiful that we don't actually have to ask that question. I don't think, who cares what an art piece is? I mean,
yeah, so but
you know what I mean?
Like, yeah, totally. It's just
but the point is, you've produced this incredible work, this animated work, which tells a story of this small house, which is a house that is on the land that you've now returned to. And your work tells a kind of very personal family story. Well, a story with that's kind of related to your sister. It's called Sisterhood.
It's written by and it's a collaborative. Yeah, it's a collaborative work. It's written by my sister and myself. In 2014, I was invited by my sister to respond to the story that she wrote about the house on Four Waters, which is the oldest house in the household where our great-grandparents lived. And she was, at that time, she was in the States, I was in Serbia. So she was studying, and she was, writing about it from a stance of like it play. And then she sent that story to me. I remember like it was yesterday. It was really like emotional for me, because it was a Natasha and I, we were always like close and a support to each other. And at the time, we were separated because she was studying in the States and I was in Serbia, and I was just like came back to that house, and I responded from that place. Like I was sitting on a threshold, and I was, replying to the sentences that she was, saying. Like she has this more like fairy tale perspective, like child perspective from it, but also filled with much of political content. So the house is kind of metaphor for from my angle is my perspective for this story. I cannot speak in her name. Is that it's like a place of stability and anchor, and something that it's that presents family, like what family is as the my most important and basic cell of a society. So, and talking about conflicts within it, and that are really kind of functionalities as well as dysfunctionalities. So this house was the anchor point of the story. So I was, I went there and I was speaking from the present moment and responding to the facts that were related to the past, mostly once we were, kids. So it's this juxtaposition of times and
so you took the story. So you took the story and you started to developing. You started developing language, or you were starting to develop
it was a dialogue. Yeah, it was a dialogue, and then like she developed her body of work related, to this story, The House on Four Waters, and it used certain portions of the text. But somehow, once I arrived to the States, I was really, I really loved that story. It was like a whole thing. I found as an important something that was important for me at that time to to be said. And I felt like I didn't want to remove any part of it, and the reason why I called it Sisterhood instead of like The House on Four Waters is because through the whole story I found the relation between us as like family members is something that it's actually defining not just two of us, not just two of us, but we are more metaphor for a family. It's like the dynamics between the family, like functionalities, dysfunctionalities is something that it's actually explaining the environment, and it can external how you say that are explaining external and internal turmoils that are happening and that you need to resolve. So and all these ideas of fear and healing and trauma work and transgenerational trauma, I found like that story is really carrying all these things within, and I animated it. I just like that was one project that I worked on for 2 years, and
as part of your work at the Connecticut University.
Yeah, that was one of the projects. And the thing is that the last image of the film is like that you are entering this old room in the house that it's now used as a storage. It's abandoned, but it's there, it's calling you to come back, to revisit. And that actually happened. Like this work was done in 2017, 18 was finished beginning, and now like 2 years later I am there actually working on restoration of.
So you took the story with you to America. You kind of meditated over it for 2 years. And you obviously developed various other works alongside. And then you decided to actually come back and directly engage with this environment that you've kind of been meditating over.
yeah, it was just like I had a need to, go back to this, household, and how you say porodično dvorište, how you would translate that, like
yeah, like a family, well, just land. It's like a kind of
family land, and to understand, the weight of it, and like to understand, myself better from where I'm coming from, like, because you have this distance that you can see yourself, but then again, at some point you need to face things that you are maybe escaping from, like some stuff that you don't like with yourself. And if we are talking about fears and dysfunctionality,
so you're now back in the noise in a way.
Yeah,
but you're a different person, so you you've had time to kind of meditate, to kind of digest the noise that you kind of took with you, and now you're back and you're kind of engaging with it directly, and you're now really kind of you have this hands-on approach.
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's that's a good summary. Yeah. So it's I re-entered family dynamics, so as an adult, right? Because you leave home. If you are forced, considering like the city or a town where you grow up, if you need to move for college, if you need to move to another city to attend college, that happens like when you are 18. I mean, it's some people, even during their college, they stay close to their parents, but it happened to me that I left once I was 18, and it's been a long time that you are back home. So yeah, I re-entered family dynamics, and like seeing these people as an adult person, and trying to understand from where they are coming from, and like what are the things that I like, dislike, have issues with, and then understanding what are the issues that I have with my own self. And that's important, like talking with if we talk like in HEKLER, hospitality and conflict, like that's it, to understand from where conflicts are coming from, and we are there, we love each other and care about each other, but care sometimes can be damaging, and that
oppressive.
It's like oppressive. Yeah. So understanding these dynamics and mechanisms, and actually learn how to love each other with who we are completely, not just because it's given to us by the fact that we are family, that we need to do that, but actually to learn what we don't like and how to live with it, and then love each other with what we maybe don't agree with, or we are like, which is a resolution of conflict.
Exactly.
So how to come to these resolutions, and so yeah, and once land, it's also involved with it, and heritage, and this history weight, it's really powerful. And once you see transformations taking place, and spaces, personal spaces that are kind of being shifted, and like me working with my dad like really closely on all of these projects, and learning stuff from him about building,
and then actually learning from you,
and then another aspect. So, and also there is this portion of it when it comes to gender and Serbia, and like having patriarchal approach to things. So it's been quite a challenge to present yourself as a builder and
authority.
Authority, and actually somebody who enters a stage as somebody who wants to learn, but also somebody who is
so not a typical female role in a household.
I mean, but in I have to say, in our countryside, like our dad was he was surrounded with women, so it was a
Yes.
matriarchate somehow.
Yeah.
But still, the idea is, that the man is the head of house and he is actually building things. So that's
Yes.
more
Yes.
something that is different. So it was challenging, to work in that environment, but it's definitely was awesome to see some shifts and
I mean, what is
transformation.
incredible there is your father, to whom you're now you're asserting your authority, actually, in a kind of interesting
Like
way.
we are, so we are joking. I mean, Nadisha and I, it's like an ultimate collaboration, but it really is like once you are, working with your family and
that means that you're really capable of collaborating.
And like talking about HEKLER, Natasha, Joshna being a family, and like it's now it's a wider network of people, but there is these family relationships involved, and also now bringing it to the our household, like a countryside. I think it's
I just don't want you to not to mention your grandmother.
Oh, my grandmother? In what?
Yeah, well, she's a kind of this incredible presence.
She's a boss.
I mean, I'm sure she is learning as well. You're changing an environment to a woman of, how old is she? I mean, age is meaningless,
80,
but
like 80, in her 80s, 82 in her 80s, yeah.
And you're reconstructing her environment, her immediate.
That was a beautiful moment, really, of like because I transferred some cottages from the place where she grew up. So, and she was always like close to these units, and now having them in the yard, it's a powerful moment.
So you took you brought some small cottages that were again traditional timber architecture. They were elsewhere on this big land. You brought them all into a smaller piece of land which is surrounding your house.
It's like a plum field that is one part of our
and you brought those
land.
houses piece by piece.
They were reconstructed because they were abandoned, neglected in that area, and they would now totally be ruined. And it's also part of my grandma. She grew up in that yard, and so she was using those units, and one of the units is called Bayat, which is the old traditional, like a Serbian traditional house where young couples would move in once.
Once they get married with the small kid.
So it's like a mlada, not bride, but a young woman would spend her time there, or a young man, and that's a place where where couples enter. So it was always open. You didn't need a key because it was like it was seen as a sin if you enter, a private space of a young woman. So there was a place where you just sleep. You have a bed and you have one closet, and that's it. But
it's a house. It's a house.
It's a
one-room house.
One house on four waters. Like the other one that is already in the yard, but this one is completely from wood.
I mean, what house on four waters? Four waters. It sounds beautifully poetic in English, but what it really means, do you want to explain?
So the house on four, like this is the question that I was constantly like asking around and discussing with our dad. Is that it's house like on four, how you say svod, on four
well, you mean the roof has four angles,
slants,
4 sides. It's a four-sided roof.
It's because water is going down, runs
4 sides, of the roof rather than on just 2.
So it has this technical
it's a direct translation. It's a direct translation from how you would call that house in Serbian language.
Exactly. So but I like the poetic aspect of it, and that was really inspiring, like for the story where that Natasha and I wrote, it's really like a crossroad to me, you know, like it's some kind of meeting point. And if you, I prefer more to understand it from a like poetic side of it than technical. But with that, last month I actually was building a roof like on 4 waters, so it was a cool experience to actually physically understand how that is, you know, constructed, and to create the space. So talking about, you know, art practice, it's really mind-blowing, you know, talking about architecture, how spaces are, you know, that you are creating are important, and the stories that they are carrying with them. Yeah,
I mean, we were talking about how you're almost becoming an architect, as I am trying to not become an architect, to unbecome the architect.
Yeah, so it's like, but yeah, you said for grandma, it's she was happy. She was excited to see that people, that we are seeing potential there, and that we are, you know, not abandoning the land,
and you're saving it from dereliction. You're kind of preserving
it. And so she was really excited about it. And I don't know, yeah, she's definitely a powerful character, somebody who was carrying the household, but there was
and so there is a real as you earlier said, there is a real transgenerational exploration that is involved in this process.
Like, totally. And you know, a history, like complex history, and each family has something, you know.
So it's interesting because it's both kind of metaphysical, it's both dealing with emotions and these, as you called them earlier, transgenerational traumas. I really like that. But it's also bureaucratic. It's also because before we started recording, we were talking about how you were sorting out all the kind of planning permissions and in fact sort of ownership structure of all these tiny little huts and things, and how there is a kind of also a kind of bureaucratic aspect of a family history that you're dealing with.
Yeah, totally. Like that's talking about like responsibility, you know, like collective
within a real society. Like one thing is art, the other thing is.
So it's like talking about, you know, individual collective traumas, individual collective responsibilities. So it's all there. Yeah, there was some bureaucratic portion that definitely had to be sorted out when it comes to, you know,
do you think do you think the bureaucracy of it, all the paperwork and that was involved in all this construction work and surrounding it, will ever make it into your artwork?
Well, I am keeping all this stuff. It's a great archive. Like it's so nonsensical to me. I don't know, people who like administration, they probably would, you know, justify every step of it. But for me, it was like completely insane. But more because, you know, like in Serbia, that part is a huge mess. Because institutions are administration, it's really poorly organized, so you have a lot of, you know, question marks, what to do, where to go, and so you are,
it's a real Kafkan atmosphere.
But then again, like throughout the whole process now, when I can like look back to it lasted for a few months. There are always a few, you know, some shiny examples that are actually doing the job well, and that they can, you know, guide you, and, you know, people who want to support you to finish what you started. So those are like positive things, but it's definitely, the process was a mess. What I see as something that should definitely be more present is the actual like support system, so that it's and that comes from like collective work, and that we should be kind of, as what I said, within the family, like, but spread it out. Like if a family is the basic cell, like things are changing there first around, kitchen table, and then it grows and can make changes within the society. So if we are, capable of like understanding with the closest ones what are good and bad aspects of like personalities, and also like how to support ourselves professionally but also personally, then we can spread that out to a bigger, like a collective, and create a network of like support. So from that aspect, I think it's really important to work on creation of these type of systems, support systems, and to be there for each other, which is not something that you would encounter within like individual artistic practices that much. Like if you are developing your own work, you are aiming for opportunities and all of that, and that doesn't have to include another person, another artist. Yes, you have collaborations, but not, there is a lot of artists that are not interested in collaboration at all. So, and I was within my work, like some of the like most fruitful projects were collaborative. Like they were kind of, they asked more from me, like more engagement, and I felt it as kind of many times as draining, but at the end, like it really brings much more insights, and it opens up so many doors for you as an artist to go back to it and explore it individually. And that's like the thing, like also talking about interdisciplinary approach to work. Once you are merging people like from different disciplines, like your the work that you are creating is becoming richer, because it takes different perspectives, it takes different kind of insights and information and knowledge, and creates this dialogue. It creates a result, like a product is a dialogue that is open for more people than just like one perspective. So that's how I think we are building the world where we can understand each other better. But also what I think is important, in order to have like the actual dialogue, and not some system that is again closed, like that it's made for a specific group. It seems open, but it's actually open for a specific group of people, not for everybody. You really think, I really think,
I mean, it's erasing certain boundaries. It's erasing the color of skin, or it's erasing issues of sexuality, of gender, or these kind of things. But at the same time, there is still a degree of
like how much you are actually open, like so it's on a surface level it seems like it's so, but actually it's not.
I mean, same with Serbia as a country. Is like, okay, we have a lesbian prime minister, but we're still,
I mean, come on,
dictatorship.
Yeah, of course.
You can be dictatorship without.
But talking about collective versus individual, and I think that's the important thing to understand, that it's also your growth as an individual is equally important, like how to balance between the individual growth and the collective work and growth. So because if we want to support each other and actually help each other grow, we also need to come from a healthy place, like to understand where is the boundary, and like how much we are resourceful and able to help the growth of the other person. So if we are talking, if you go back again to basic cell as like a family, as a basic cell, and like how much, what is the process of like going outside of the house and seeing your house from the distance, and then coming back, and then again rework, and then again go back go out, like leave the house, and then so going back and forth in trying to understand, you are learning about yourself, and you are learning about that house. So in order for resolution to happen, it takes, process of individual growth is essential in order to help the collective. So it's I don't know, it's a really, collaborations are amazing.
They're not two different things, that's the point.
Yeah, that's the so it's, I think it's really valuable for people that are involved in art to experience what does it mean to give away your authorship and allow something that it's not related to that to grow, and actually allow that creative creative process to be shared. And
it's almost like planting a seed, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You are I mean, I remember.
So what is your work? Is your work the seed, or is your work whatever, it's this kind of
yeah, exactly, like you as an architect. Like I had a conversation recently with my friend who is also an architect, and it was like I first time I experienced now with this building, it's like I feel like you are doing, yeah, it's a physical work, and it exists three-dimensionally in space, but it feels invisible, like invisible labor, so, and like talking about the stage as an architect,
you mean everyone takes it for granted?
Yeah. Yeah, and then at the end,
everyone takes architecture for granted.
So and it's so she was saying about this moment of like, you are so into it, you are giving your whole self in the project, in drawing out and la la la, and it seems as an invisible labor, and that stage is really kind of painful. And then like after some time, when that starts to have like a life for itself, and you can go back to it and see like how much it was done there, and this revisiting and this kind of nurture of a relationship between the object and the process of making, as well as between the people that are involved in collaboration, and accountability between all the involved, that can that allows people to rely on each other, is something really that makes us feel as a part of something bigger that we can perceive, and that it's like a really powerful.
I mean, I because I think you just reminded me of that feeling, of that kind of overwhelming feeling that everything is made, everything is drawn, there is labor involved, and
yeah, like when if we talk about like this building process that is happening in our countryside, like yes, you have dad and me working on stuff, then you have journeyman coming, like that's like also group of people, then you have my mom cooking for everybody, so that's like a great support and there to help whenever is needed, grandma who is allowing that to happen, and that it's also they allowed us to be in the house and like create these changes. Natasa, Josh, and I like doing stuff. My boyfriend helping me. So all these people are involved, and to erase that, like to not acknowledge that that's the actual reality, is something that it's creating this how you say lack of connection between people.
Ignorance.
And it's ignorance, and it's something that that was really for me hard to jump again into, because in Serbia, when I came back, there is like this moment of the people really want to kind of possess the, oh, I did it, or to not acknowledge enough the team,
the collaborative
work.
aspect,
so because it's, of course, that it's nice at the end to stand and say, this is what I did, especially if it's something that is really ambitious, and it feels nice, but that's not the point. Like it's a bigger success where you see that, so many people were able to kind of function and, understand each other and differences and similarities and all of that, and actually build something. And like what you said, like when you talk, but I was always amazed while I was living in New York when you go to BQE. So it's it's this metal structure, kako se kaže, nadvožnjak. You are passing.
Like a highway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a highway, but you are going under, and you are seeing.
Yes, it's elevated highways. In New York,
yeah. So you are going under it. You are passing under it, and you are seeing this gigantic metal structures where each of those like bolts is fabricated. So it's made, and how much labor is there that is involved, and you are right. I stopped seeing that once you are like just living and seeing that environment every single day, you kind of become like blind to it, so
yeah. I think everyone is kind of by default blind to it. It's just that I think it's actually the moment of awakening that is needed, rather.
Yeah, and like to understand, to awakening and cherishing of that collective effort that